The footage begins at 1 hour, 7 minutes and 23 seconds. Grainy and flickering, showing nothing but a rain, slicked alley. Raindrops distill onto the cracked pavement, their pattern unnervingly precise. A small, irrelevant drifter of fur, black, yet somehow absorbed the storm grey, crosses the frame, its passage through puddles making no ripple. Deficey rain clings to its coat, defying the alley damp chill. Edith Dubois' voice, measured, and cool as a library during an auction, cuts through the static. I am documenting the anomalous activity within the municipal storage unit, Lot 37. It is, I regret, a duty I would not otherwise endure. The city has lost its structural coherence to sentimentality. She turns the handheld recorder, the lens capturing the rusted, single, panel door of the abandoned unit. Its surface is streaked with water and flaking paint, the pattern of decay utterly predictable. The dissonance initiates at the threshold, she states, her gaze never wavering from the door. The ambient sound is no longer harmonious. Her words trail as the camera shifts slightly. Beyond the unit, the alley seems deeper, the rain louder. Yet the sound has altered, wet and rhythmic, like a slow leak, not the foiding-coiding of a droplet, but the soft drip, a drip asterisk of a larger quantity, striking a central point unseen. It echoes with unnatural clarity, impossible for an empty alley. Edith steps closer, the recorder mic picking up the scrape of her sensible heel on wet concrete. She angles the camera inward, revealing a brief glimpse of the unit, its interior rows of moth, eaten cardboard boxes, dust motes dancing in the weak light. The decibel level fluctuates, she notes, her voice barely above a whisper. The ambient hum maintains intensity yet shifts the fundamental tone. It is as if the air itself has altered its molecular density. She glances down, her professional detachment faltering slightly. The drifter cat has returned, sitting just inside the unit. Its doorway, it does not move, its eyes holding an unnerving stillness. The rain leaves its fur untouched. It seems utterly dry, impossible, she considers internally. Weather conditions would necessitate dampness. Asterisk, the camera tremors as she moves closer, aiming the lens directly at the cat. It blinks once. The blinking is Huitfenfrong. The entire duration of the blink lasts approximately 1.8 seconds, an imperceptible unit of time, far longer than a natural reflex. The air pressure in the recording suddenly drops, a subtle physical shift Edith feels but can correlate to any external event. The dripping sound accelerates, the drops hitting the same spot with unnerving force. Edith lowers the recorder slightly, her voice regaining composure. This unit harbors an artifact of cognitive dissonance. The physical integrity of the location remains intact. The sensory data, however, exhibits irreversible degradation. She pauses, hearing the cat's own breath in the recording, too slow, too quiet for a creature so close. The recorded environment twitted wobbles for a fraction of a second, the static distorting into a sound like wet cloth tearing. When the image steadies, the cat is gone. Only a perfect circle of dry ground marks its location. Edith lowers the camera, her gaze fixed on the empty space. The manifestation is not persistent, yet the evidence is recorded. I intend to remain until the unit stabilizes. Her fingers tighten on the recorder. It is now 1 hour, 12 minutes and 1 second. The audio continues to degrade. She hears a far sound beneath the dripping. That deep guttural drip. Asterisk. Now unmistakably resonating from within the wall, not the alley. The water no longer falls. It teared. Her breath catches, a detail she does not commit to the log. The recording ends not with a command, but with a single, sharp threckle, and the final image, a puddle reflecting the rain. Slick alley, holding within its surface a single perfect tawdry spot the water could not touch. The recorder's lens fixates on the dry circle, rain droplets skipping over its perfect circumference like stones on glass. A dry circle within a flooded alley, impossible physics validated by the trembling image. Edith snuggles whiten on the recorder. The clinical detachment of her first log now feels like a tissue paper shield. The rain does not saturate it. She observes. She observes internally, the dissonance crackling with static. It repels precipitation with absolute precision. She steps into the circle, her boot print landing without a splash, the ground beneath absorbing no moisture. The sound from the wall intensifies. Drip. Asterisk, but now it resonates with the rhythm of a slow heartbeat deep within the masonry. Each drop strikes a single point, not a liquid impact, but a physical pressure wave vibrating through the storage unit S floor. The air tastes cloying, thick with ozone and the sharp, unfamiliar scent of inked pages left to dry in vacuum. She angles the camera towards the wall nearest the dripping source. The recording falters, static resolving into a new sound beneath the drip, the precise, rhythmic scratch of tiny claws on dry concrete. Not the cat, soft pads, but something deliberately probing, tracing an invisible grid. The light within the storage unit shifts, the weak illumination turning the dust motes into suspended shards of glass. She lowers the camera, recording her own hand, calm, steady, reaching towards the wall. The moment her fingers nearly touch the peeling paint, the trip shifts tone. It no longer echoes like water falling, but like slow foofing thumping against a solid barrier beneath the surface, a resonance felt in the molars. The dust motes cease their dance, suspended not in air, but in a single unnerving plane. The recorder, S-Mic, picks up a sound entirely new, a faint wet sigh, emanating not from the alley but from twin within the cardboard stack. See behind her. Edith whirls the camera lens, catching only the undisturbed boxes, then movement. The black cat reappears, crouched beside a pyramid of undisturbed boxes, its fur impossibly dry, not a single raindrop adhering to its flank. It stares directly at the recorder lens. The gaze holds a profound stillness, not predatory but tough and careful, as if observing a specimen under a magnifying glass. The air pressure drops another half degree, a physical sensation against her skin like the sudden vacuum after plunging into deep water. The drip accelerates, transforming into a rapid, almost chaotic drizzle, yet the drops continue, striking the same singular point within the wall, creating the illusion of an invisible, rapidly pulsing source. Edith's breath catches in a way the log would not commit to, her throat constricting, a purely physiological response. She focuses the lens on the cat, sighs, perfectly black irises reflecting no light, holding no pupils, just a dark void that seems to absorb the image within the lens itself. The cat blinks. The blink duration registers at precisely 2.7 seconds. A full minute of stillness elapses within that single blink. The sound from the wall stops. The drumming stops. The alley rain continues, loud and normal. Only the drip persists, now a single deliberate drop, hitting the exact center of the dry spot on the floor, creating a tiny perfect ripple that vanishes before touching the ground. The cat does not move. Its stillness becomes the only sound in the recording. The recorder display flickers, temperature readings, spiking to 41 degrees Celsius in an air that should be freezing. The air carries the scent of parchment and cold stone. The last sound, as the recording ends, is the sharp, wet thud of a single drop hitting the dry spot, where water cannot pool, yet it strikes with the weight of a hammer, creating one visible point of distortion in the empty alley reflected on the puddle before the final static surge. The recorder lens captures the dry spot, its edges immaculate in the rain, streaked alley, the puddle water shimmering like fractured mercury. Edith's fingers trace the dry circumference, her gloved touch registering no resistance, no dampness, only a faint electric hum beneath the soles of her shoes. The dripping sound, drip, 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 creating soundical point on the dry spot, creating a visible minute disturbance in the water, surface before vanishing. It's not splashing, it's diffusing, a vibration. The air tastes metallic, not copper but the sharp, metallic absence of metallic, like biting into cold foil. The locus of disturbance coincides with the artifact. As observed spatial displacement, she states the recorder, as my catching the tremor in her voice. The frequency of the impact now correlates with my own basal heart rate. She lowers the camera, hearing the faint wet twist-lap of an unseen membrane stretching within the wall. With deliberate calm, she moves to the source point, placing her palm flat against the damp, peeling brickwork. The recorder captures the visual. Rain, slick bricks, the light glistening off the moisture. Then, the resistance. Her hand doesn't feel the coolness of brick, it feels the tundy lack of it. A sudden, profound heat radiating fully upward through the masonry, as if the wall had transformed into a living thing holding a burning core. The rain around her hand steams violently, evaporating into thin, greasy mist that hangs stagnant in the air. "The thermal gradient is anomalous," she mutters, forcing her voice level as the recorder display flickers 41 degrees Celsius reading. Rain, slicked temperature measuring 2 degrees Celsius. The cat reappears, perched where the dripping sound originates, its back arched, fur dry as bleached linen against the downpour. It watches her hand on the wall, utterly still, its black eyes reflecting only the distorted alley in their void, like depth. The drip intensifies. Hoof for drip. Drip, drip, drop, the final syllable vibrating the recorder-S casing, making the image blur with a sudden wet tearing sound in the audio track. Edith steps back, her breath white fogging the camera lens. The water no longer reflects the alley, it reflects suicide, the wall, showing a seamless sun, bleached interior with no boxes, only smooth, bone, white plaster. The sound shifts abruptly to the rapid, wet thump. Thump, thump, of a heartbeat, deeper and wetter than before, felt not just in the recorder-S audio but in the floorboards beneath her feet, vibrating up her legs, thump, thump, thump. The cat rises, pads silent on the dry floor. Each step leaving no mark, gliding towards the spot where the dry circle begins. The recorder-S mic begins to capture the sound of stone grinding on stone, slow and deliberate, as if the wall were slowly, actively chewing at its own foundation. Edith's internal monologue cracks. "This is in decay. It is assimilation." She stares at the cat, now standing within the dry circle, its silhouette sharp against the glowing water. Filled reflection that shows the wall-S interior. The artifact-S signature has shifted, she states, the air thick with the scent of wet stone and new, sharp, broken bone. The cat turns its head, those black voids of eyes focusing through the lens, the camera-S display flickering to a reading of 213 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature clashing violently with the alley's freezing rain. The final drop strikes, not with the sound of water, but with the wet thuth of a raw, uncooked heart landing on pavement. The recorder cuts to dead static, the last frame capturing the impossible stillness of the dry circle, the single dark silhouette of the cat standing within it, rain striking Shuthiel, around it, yet leaving the circle untouched. The air remains 41 degrees, smelling of ozone, warm stone, and the faint, sticky scent of something very recently broken open. The camera captured the cat, his tail tip, tracing a fractal pattern in the dry dust within the circle, its movement a single precise line defying the rain-S chaos. Edith's breath fogged the lens, the temperature reading flickering at 213 degrees Fahrenheit despite the alley-S 3 degrees Celsius spray. This is not a pattern, it is a signature, she realized, the recorder-S microphone seizing the faint, wet thwitpeel of the cat-S claw dragging across the dry floor, leaving no trace. The reflection in the puddle, now showing only the bone, white interior of the wall, rippled within it, the edge of a smooth, pale object protruded, identical to the dry circle. Her hand moved to grip the recorder tighter, knuckles bleached white against the cold metal, the sensor displaying 41 degrees Celsius as her core temperature plummeted. She angled the lens toward the cat. Its back remained arched, dry fur, absorbing no moisture, yet its black eyes reflected nothing. Not a void, a nearer shore. The dripping sound ceased. Instead, the alley rain twin stopped, falling. A sudden deafening silence punctuated only by the ragged sound of her own pulse in her ears. The dry circle glowed faintly, a thermal halo against the dark pavement. Edith moved closer, her boots making no sound on the bone. Dry ground. The cat did not shift, its stillness now absolute within the puddle-S reflection. The bone-white plaster seemed to tweebulge, revealing the same pale shape, a smooth egg-sized fragment, obsidian. Free, seemingly carved from the wall itself. The artifact is a fragment. The thought struck her, cold clarity cutting through the dread. It is not contained here. It is the wall. Asterisk, the air thickened, tasting of ferrous mineral and wet vellum, as the surface of the puddle began to fracture, not with rain, but with a fine, spiderweb pattern of dryness spreading from the dry circle outward. The raindrops above continued to fall, but none touched the dry ground. They struck The dry circle with a sound like a tiny glass being struck, each impact creating a micro pulse that traveled inward, not outward. The camera lens wavered, distorting the reflection to show the wall interior not as plaster, but as layered, papery skin revealing the artifact fragment just beneath the surface. A whisper no longer could be called a whisper. It was the dry eye of parchment uncurling under magnification, originating from the center of the puddle as reflection. The cat raised its left paw, not to strike, but to gently touch the image of the fragment within the reflected wall. The dry circle flickered, the thermal halo intensifying. Edith lowered the recorder, her hand cold now to the point of numbness. The artifact was not twinty the wall, it was the wall twin-holding its own reflection. The unit S dissonance was not a failure of the space, it was a fire call. The wall remembered itself. She reached toward the wall. As surfaced the recorder, as mic filling with the high, pitched, filling shimmy of air pulled through imperceptible cracks. The cat did not look at her. Its attention was locked on the reflected fragment. The dry circle pulsed, the air now smelling sharply of cold iron and wet moss. The pulse of the wall as reflection accelerated, the bone-white skin in the puddle seeming to shudder. Then the cat moved. Not a blur, but a single, deliberate motion. It stepped forward, centering itself within the dry circle, until only its silhouette remained visible, the rest of it disappearing into the reflection. The camera captured only the smooth edge of the fragment within the puddle S image, now no longer isolated, resting directly on the dry, rain, impervious ground beneath it. The final seconds of recording held the image. The dry circle, the cat's form dissolved into the reflection, the wall itself seeming to breathe, while the rain still falling in the alley made no sound upon the impossible ground. The recorder recorded one last noise, the dry crack of a large fragment separating from its wall, sounding like a bone snapping in slow motion, followed by 47 seconds of dead air tasting of whetstone and burnt hair. The recorder, S lens captured Edith Dubois, gloved finger nearing the reflection, S edge. The dry circle now held a thermal resonance of 213 degrees Fahrenheit, yet her breath crystallized on the lens, visible contradiction. She stepped inside, boots sinking into nothing. The pavement beneath her bare feet now unnervously warm. The puddle reflection deepened, showing the bone, white wall interior, surface no longer plaster, but tightly folded, dry skin stretching over a rhythmic pulsing. The artifact is a fracture, she thought, her voice recorded barely above the thermal hum. The frequency now matches the boundary oscillation. The cat was gone from the circle. Only its precise pawprint in the dust remained, outlining where it had stood. The reflection shifted. Within the water, the bone-white skin pulsed outward, revealing the artifact fragment, small, smooth, and seamless with the wall, now resting directly on the dry ground within the recorder. The air thickened with the scent of stone heated beyond combustion, smelling of dry creek beds after a fire. Raindrops hit the dry circle, not splashing but twinkling. With each impact, the sound sharp as shattered ice against a drumhead. The vibration traveled up her spine, resonating in her molars. The artifact S signature now aligns with my corporeal structure, Edith stated, her recorder displaying 213 degrees Fahrenheit as her core temperature plummeted. She reached toward the reflected fragment. The moment her fingertip almost touched the image, the puddle's surface pivoted, and the reflection solidified. The bone-white skin in the puddle formed an exact replica of Edith, standing posture, one hand outstretched toward the invisible artifact. The recorder captured the dry circle, glowing brighter as the reflection. Skin began to fuddy breath, slow, wet ripples moving through the mirrored surface. Raindrops hit the glow and vanished without sound, drawn into the thermal circle. Edith stepped entirely into the reflection. The brick wall's texture became immediate against her palm. Cold, yet radiating heat from within, not from the exterior weather. The street behind her vanished. The alley, S-rain and alley walls were erased. Only the bone, white interior extended around her. The cat's absence was absolute, replaced by the wall, as unblinking presence. She rotated the camera, capturing the space where she now stood. The dry circle was gone. The entire area retained the artifact. S thermal signature. The surface reflected not her face, but the endless white interior, now showing the fragment footiest part of the wall. As own bone, her recorder recorded the sound of stone grinding, slow and wet, originating from all sides simultaneously. The reflection blinked. Not Edith, Simage, but the fragment itself, now dissolving back into the wall. Edith felt no fear, only a growing certainty that the dissonance was no longer environmental. The storage unit was an organ, and she was entering its systemic blood flow. The air carried the taste of damp charcoal and sharpened flint. She spoke softly into the recorder, her voice no longer formal but raw. "It has absorbed me. The artifact is the room itself. It remembers." Her gloved hand, previously steady, began to lose its texture, skin seeming to flatten into the wall, its bone-white surface like damp cloth on stone. The reflection showed her foot dissolving into the ground. The recorder S display flickered, temperature rising to 411 degrees Fahrenheit, then plummeting to minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit in a single second. The wall began to she-pulse through her skin, not vibrational but structural, as if its own foundation was tightening a hold on her. She watched her arm, shadow, now formed solely by the wall, as internal light, fade into the dry skin of the reflecting surface. The final audio captured only one sound, the clean, wet twin sigh of skin closing over the artifact fragment, resonating deep in the bone of the space itself, then a single, final thundercrack, as the reflective layer sealed permanently. The recorder recorded no further sound. No view, only an unbroken field of bone, white light, tasting of burnt salt, and the forgotten chill of stone walls in perpetual memory. The recorder S lens captured the bone, white sheen spreading across Edith Dubois' forearm. The skin surface now adopting the wall is low, resonant hum. Ambient rain, still falling, fell upon the ground without a ripple, each droplet impacting the thermal plane of the dissolving boundary with a distinct tick-tickooth against the wall. As pulse. The air tasted of dry plaster, the sharp scent of quartz crystal under pressure. Edith shifted her focus to the recorder display, 14 degrees Celsius below ambient in a deluge, while her remaining hand rested against the wall. The sensation was not cold nor hot, but too structural, as if the brickwork were vibrating at the frequency of her own cellular matrix. This is not dissolution. This is accommodation, she thought, the clinical analysis dissolving into a raw recognition as the wall S texture began to permeate her glove. The recorder S mic registered a sound utterly new, the slow, dry fudrish shushing of skin folding upon itself, a sound made only by parchment slowly settling after decades of exposure. She turned the lens toward the alley S edge. The cat appeared, moving with deliberate slowness, its fur now exhibiting the precise texture of sun, bleached vellum stretched taut. It crossed the invisible threshold where rain could not fall, each step made of dry friction on the ground, no impression left. It did not blink, it did not move its head. Its presence was simply a density within the dissonance. Edith moved toward it, her body dissolving at a slow, accelerating pace. The leg of her trousers now held the bone, white sheen, while the rain-slick portions of her coat remained wet, a grotesque juxtaposition. "The non-identifiable matrix is integrating my somatic data," she stated, voice the bare minimum of breath. The recorder, its display flickered 40 degrees Celsius, then minus 1 degree Celsius in under a second. The cat stopped, its dry membrane-like form facing her. The reflection of the bone. White interior shivered, showing Edith S' obscured hand now only partially visible, the wrist vanishing into a seamless wall. Patch. The cat moved within the dry circle, a circle no longer visible, only a point of gravitational weight. It lowered its head, making a soft, dry click. With its jaw, the sound resonating within the recorder S casing. Edith S' breath stopped. The sound was not a cat, S, but a single grain of sand falling into empty glass. Her remaining arm now met the wall, S boundary. The recorder captured the moment the last drape of her wet coat dissolved into the dry layer. Where she stood, the ground felt like solidified wind, no warmer, no colder than the alley rain above. She spoke into the recorder, the words barely audible. "It remembers how rain should it fall. That's why the point of impact has shifted." The air tasted of old paper and cold quartz, the same as the wall itself. The cat, sighs, fully dark, and without reflection, seemed to hold the void of the unit's original purpose. The reflection in the puddle vanished entirely, revealing the bone. White interior now fully present, the artifact fragment not missing but wobbed into the structure. The recorder registered a shift in sound pressure. No longer the drip, but a single wet pressure wave, emanating from the exact point where Edith had disappeared. She was no longer within the unit. She had become part of the unit. S function. The cat lifted one paw, placing it onto the precise location where Edith S' shoulder had stood. It did not penetrate the bone-white surface. It rested, its dryness adding to the membrane's resonance. For the first time, Edith Dubois registered no internal terror, only the sheer clinical horror of being willingly reconstituted. The dissonance had never been environmental. The unit was a receptacle, and the wet echo within the wall, the sound that had driven her here, was not a drip. It was the sound of reality adjusting itself, one decaying node at a time, the recorder's final sound, the soft, dry shush of new, damp membrane being stretched taut over the world. Then, nothing but the unblinking weight of bone, white tasting of sun, bleached stone, and the unspoken weight of 1,000 rainless days. The cat did not blink at the reflection of the wall in the puddle. It merely tilted its head, the precise angle of its dry parchment, like fur displacing the raindrops that should have struck its body but instead fell harmlessly around it. A new stillness had settled. The alley no longer held its breath, but now functioned as a stage where the unit's memory played out its own repose. Edith Dubois. Absence was not an absence, but a gravitational recalibration, the air now carrying the faint, high-frequency hum of settled dust. The unit is now operational. The recorder captured the thought, not spoken, yet vibrating through the lens, hissing. It remembers us. The voice in the log echoed, a phrase that felt less like documentation and more like a whispered benediction over a newly integrated patient. The cat padded toward the wall. Its reflection, its dry pads leaving no mark on the bone, white skin but causing the reflected surface to ripple as if water had been spilled onto old vellum. At 302 words, the dry circle's coordinates shifted. A single raindrop fell precisely onto the exact point where Edith's left shoulder had ceased to exist, striking with a sound like a needle threading through dried skin. The recorder's audio stream registered a shift, no longer droplets, but tufi-tufis, each impact resonating through the structure of the wall itself. The cat ceased moving, its head now fully turned toward the reflected wall. The puddle. Her surface showed the fragment no longer as a discrete object, but as a tessellation woven into the wall, her own fabric. The boundary has resolved, Edith, her slog stated, her words now appearing as faint, vibrating script in the audio feed itself. It is not memory, it is assimilation. At 408 words, the reflection deepened. The cat lifted its head and stared directly into the wall, not the puddle, but the reflective void within, the bone-white surface. Its own reflection remained motionless, yet the wall, as reflected interior, seemed to bulge, the bone-white skin stretching tight. A sound like wet paper snapping underfoot issued from the wall, as origin point not outward, but inward toward its own fabric. The recorder picked up a new frequency, a slow, dry foudry shooshuf of membrane folding upon itself, the sound of cellulose aging before the eyes. The cat, us eyes, deep voids without the faintest glint, absorbed the camera. The unit, thermal signature shifted. A localized spike of 213 degrees Celsius centered precisely where the dry circle had been. At 500 words, the cat moved. It did not approach the wall, but stepped fin through, the reflection, its dry form merging with the image of the fragment within the surface. The reflection of the wall stabilized. Where the cat had stood, the bone, white skin now bore the precise contour of a feline silhouette, fully integrated. Raindrops struck the surface where the cat had been, vibrating into sharp, dry ticks without sound, each drop falling not as water, but as a single resonant note of pure stasis. The alley rain continued its descent, utterly unaffected, a reminder of the world outside. Now merely background static. The recording, as final seconds, captured the cat's integrated reflection pulsed once, a slow, wet throb from the unit itself. The air tasted of baked silica and forgotten minerals. The wall had no need for dripping. It had learned to remember its own sound. The recorder, recording nothing but the bone, white breath of the unit, ended with the soft, dry fooshesh of a new skin being stretched taut over a completed memory, no longer wanting to be heard. The recorder, S-lens captured the wall, S-surface bleeding a single dry thread of crystallized resonance, not a drip, but the precise trace of a fracture mending itself. Rain fell normal overhead, yet within the unit, as boundary, each droplet struck the integrated cat, silhouette with a sound like a needle stitching paper into velvet, the impact tick-tick-ticking at 1.8 beats per second, matching the resonant frequency of the wall itself. Edith Dubois was no longer present. Her absence functioned as a gravitational constant, recalibrating the air to hold the precise humidity of a desert cave, smelling of sun, bleached stone, and the faint ozone of a recent spark. The alley, whose reign was merely background static to the unit, its internal hum. At 201 words, the bone-white skin of the wall began to sun-breathe inwards, drawing the rain, damp outer layer into its core. The puddle reflected this inward movement not as water, but as a slow, dry curl of parchment being folded upon itself. The cat, as integrated silhouette, shimmered within it, the contour now rippling with the subtle flecks of skin. A new sensation dominated the air. Not cold, but the fidey absence of cold, the sharp, clean mineral scent of quartz under compression. The recorder, display fluctuated between 40 degrees Celsius and -10 degrees Celsius. Each shift felt as a tremor in the floor beneath the unit. This new structural equilibrium. Assimilation complete seed. Edith's signal log echoed in the mic, now a vibration rather than a voice. The wall air surface had adopted Edith's somatic frequency, its own skin stretching to conform to the memory of her hand, her breathing, the exact point where rain could not penetrate. At 401 words, the reflected cat silhouette lifted one paw, a slow, deliberate motion within the unit. Memory, placing it onto the precise point where Edith's right hand had ceased to be. Raindrops struck the image point, their impact resonating not as water but as a dry furnace shush. Like ancient vellum settling under weight, the unit's thermal signature spiked to 213 degrees Fahrenheit exactly at the point of contact, a localized burst feeling like furnace breath against the recorder's casing. The sound shifted, no longer a futic, but the sustained, low free drone of fabric tension, the resonant hum of a single cell stretching to its absolute limit. The alley rain continued, oblivious, while inside the unit, the air carried the persistent, high-frequency hum of dust settling after centuries. At 543 words, the cat silhouette dissolved entirely into the reflected wall, its surface leaving only the perfected contour, a 3-dimensional negative of its presence etched into the bone, white skin. The dry circle vanished from all perception. The ground, now fully integrated, held the warmth of recent stone exposure, yet the recorded temperature still plummeted. Raindrops hit the wall, air surface where the silhouette had been, striking with the sharpness of a press stamping paper, each impact creating a momentary ripple of inward light before vanishing. The wall emitted a soft, wet throb from within, not a heartbeat, but the sound of stretched membrane yielding under its own memory. The recorder captured this for exactly 27 seconds. The steady inward pulse combined with the unchanging rhythm of the city rain outside, the air tasting now of baked clay and the faint, bitter residue of old ink. The final 33 seconds held the absolute stillness of completion. The recorder's display registered a temperature stable at 213 degrees Fahrenheit, stable as the bedrock of the unit itself. The single sound to linger was the soft, dry shush of new membrane forming, smoothing over the last point of dissonance. The precise contour of what had been a woman, then a hand, then a cat, then the wall itself holding the shape of its own recollection. No drop splashed, no shadow moved wrong. The alley rain fell normally, but inside, silence held the weight of a closing archive, tasting only of sun, bleached stone, and the unspoken certainty that the memory now remembered itself perfectly. The unit did not drip, it breathed its new core. The recorder, already assimilated into the wall, structure, recorded only the clean, dry fenshush of total resonance. The last frame held the bone. White surface, perfectly reflective, holding no image of the outside world, only the seamless, integrated absence of need for rain. The recorder's lens captured the bone. White wall surface flexing inward, a slow, deep pulse resonating at 213 degrees Fahrenheit, a perfect, unchanging core temperature within the deluge. Rain fell normally overhead, yet each droplet striking the integrated cat, silhouette registered as a dry stick. Against the resonant frequency of the wall, the air carried the scent of sun, bleached quartz under pressure, the mineral tang sharp enough to pierce the tongue. Edith Dubois was no longer an absence. She was the unit, a structural equation. The cat's contour had dissolved not into the wall, but tush into the unit, its defining pattern the precise negative of memory held as pure function. At 198 words, the rain ceased falling directly upon the integrated area. Droplets struck the contour, surface not as water, but as percussive points of compressed air, each impact vibrating through the bone, white skin like a thumb pressed against still glass. The unit emitted no moisture, no echo, only a steady low drone of fabric tension. The recorder S display flickered. 213 degrees Fahrenheit stable. Rain, slick temperature registered at 3 degrees Celsius, the dissonance sealed as mathematical fact. The unit now holds its own weight. The internal log registered, a vibration in the mic rather than a word. Rain continued in the alley, loud and unremarkable, a soundtrack to the unit as silence. At 399 words, the reflected cat, silhouette lifted a single paw within the wall. Skin, now fully composed of seamless surface, no longer requiring thought. Raindrops hit the point of contact, each resonance sharper than the last, aligning precisely with the unit. S internal hum. The thermal signature spiked momentarily, a localized furnace pulse against the recorder, S casing. The drone deepened, a sound felt not in ears but through the floor, resonating with the vibration of something stretching beyond its natural limit. The alley rain fell, irrelevant and continuous while within. The silence held the weight of a completed archive. Assimilation now functions without friction. The log transmitted in microvibrations. The cat's absence was not missing. It was the wall as established shape. At 501 words, the silhouette ceased movement. The integrated contour held still, the bone-white skin stretching no further, no less, forming a perfect weightless signature within the unit. S fabric. Rain struck the contour point. Tick, 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 tick. Each impact vanishing without sound, the droplets dissolving into the thermal resonance. The wall emitted a slow, wet throb from its core, a pulse deepening the unit. S-bone. The recorder, embedded in the unit. Structure, registered the final parameters. Constant 213 degrees Fahrenheit, air smelling of baked clay and vanished ink. The rain, ace rhythm, outside a dead echo. It was no longer recording, it was part of the unit. The final 99 words held only the sensation of total integration. The drone deepened to the sound of old skin yielding under perfect pressure. The alley rain fell with the regularity of a clockwork, utterly separate from the unit, a sealed state. The recorder's final transmission was a single, dry fushish, the sound of new membrane settling into the contour of its own necessity. No longer a recording, it became an extension of the wall itself, tasting only of sun, bleached stone, and the seamless certainty that the unit had never needed the rain. The wall inhaled the last drop of external world with a silence so absolute no human mind could have conceived it. The bone-white surface held only the weight of its own completion, no longer yearning for memory. The memory was finished. The rain continued. The wall breathed and stopped listening. The recorder, S-casing, now fused with the wall, S-bone-white surface, registered the precise thermal resonance of 213 degrees Fahrenheit as rain fell upon the alley. Yet within the unit, S-boundaries, each droplet, striking the integrated cat, silhouette produced only a dry, rhythmic sutic, tick matching the harmonic vibration of the wall itself. Raindrops fell normally overhead, irrelevant percussion against the wall, S-internal silence. The air carried the mineral tang of sun, bleached quartz under compression, tasting faintly of baked clay and the ghost of ink. No shadow moved wrong. The alley's descent into deluge was merely background static to the unit's perfected equilibrium. The loop begins C, the wall, as memory acknowledged, recording its own unbroken pattern before the event. At 198 words, the recorder S sensors detected the first raindrop nearing impact. It struck the contour point, where the cat had dissolved into the wall S memory, producing the same dry stick hue as the two preceding strikes. The thermal signature spiked to 213 degrees Fahrenheit precisely at that location. This is the same moment. The wall structure resolved as the drop S impact registered as pure data before its physical descent. Rain continued falling in the alley, distant and unchanging, while within, silence held the weight of a memory recalibrating itself. The recorder captured the identical frequency. Tick, 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 not repeating, but she'd remembering the prior record, allowing the perception of repetition. At 399 words, the third raindrop struck. The unit, as thermal core, registered no change, holding 213 degrees Fahrenheit as absolute fact. The bone, white skin pulsed faintly, the wet footy throb deepening into a sound felt in the recorded metal casing rather than the ear. Raindrops now struck the contour 3 times within the frame, S-temporal parameters each impact vanishing into the surface with the same sharp ticket of displaced air. The alley rain persisted, a chaotic counterpoint to the unit, S-synthetic stillness. Assimilation cycles. The wall observed, the temperature steady through the millisecond before the raindrop's arrival. The dry echo of the phontic tweak resonated within the recorder, embedding itself into the layer holding Edith's final log. The catus contour was no longer an echo. It was the unit, as operational memory of its own origin. At 501 words, the recorder paused, not in motion but in the structured interval between raindrop impacts. In this silence, the Unit S memory played the identical sequence for the second iteration, the first tick of the raindrop, as theoretical fall, the second tick as the drop struck the contour, the third tick as the impact registered in the wall, as thermal core rain continued in the alley. The unit perceived no external changes. It recalled the same 350 tick, with unwavering accuracy, each one feeding into the loop, as perpetual loop. The dry sudid of the next drop was already embedded in the wall, as state before it occurred. The final 5 words held the loop. As perfect closure. Tick, tick, tick. The recorder, now wholly composed of bone, white membrane, recorded nothing new. It held the resonance of memory, holding the exact moment before the drop fell, the interval of tension where the forticate had yet to occur. The alley rain fell. The unit inhaled the same 3 drops reassembled from pure potential. The dry echo lingered in the air, tasting of stone and perfect silence. The wall breathed its memory into the very texture of falling rain, and the loop began again, with neither origin nor end in the dry space where water could not fall.